Welcome to the next edition of Tecman Talks Dynamics. I'm joined today by George, who is a new face for our podcast. George is one of our Dynamics trainers, and what he doesn't know about Dynamics is not worth knowing. And in this episode, we're going to talk about some of the reporting features that we feel are really underutilised in the product. One of the things that when we kick off projects, customers always say that one of their key objectives is to get better reporting. And I think it's probably fair to say that it's something that people don't always achieve because they run out of time, they're not sure what to do, there's so many different tools, there's so many different ways. And there are lots and lots of great tools on the market for reporting. There's, whether it's Power BI, whether it's Jet. But actually, we feel that the features that are inbuilt into Dynamics and are there and ready to use out the box are really underutilised, and people could get much more.
Well, yes, there's almost too much of a reaction to go outside the system to Jet or Power BI straight away, and they're underusing what's in the system.
Yeah.
And they also need to pencil in time to come back to what they can get out of the system once the dust has settled, so to speak, from the project.
Yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because when you first set up a system, there's no data in it. So a lot of the things, the screens that you go to or the reports that you run don't really show anything meaningful. It's something that maybe once you're a few months in, that really all needs to be revisited to go and look at what those standard tools can give you.
Especially some of the screens, some of the columns they'll want to make use of aren't the default columns that they can see as standard, so they need to be told they're there, then they can personalise it and turn it on. Okay,
so if we just look at some of the features, maybe that aren't necessarily print out reports. Gone are the days where you used to print out a report, put it in that folder and put it on the shelf and no one ever looked at it ever again.
Well, no, it's self-service now, isn't it?
It's very much so, and people want information that's very easy to access, that kind of hits them in the face in a morning. So what kind of features would you recommend that people start to look at that are available in the system today?
The most underused is the actual role centre. People tend to, quite understandably, just get on with their job. So they ignore that entire front screen that's full of things like the queues that are giving them filtered views, that's got the lead into some suggested reports, that's got the built-in Excel reports. There's a whole suite of things there that they bypass and get straight on with a task. So taking the time to get familiar with the role centre might be a good starting point.
Yeah, and also really thinking about what information is valuable to your team when they first log on in the morning, and hit them in the face with that, because it's in the role centre. They don't have to look for it. It's right there.
They should think about a bit of a sliding scale. So what can I get from the standard system queues, or what can I do for myself then? We're building some save views, so I'm filtering the data to see what I really want to see.
Yeah.
Then investigate the system reports. Then look at delivering those perhaps as scheduled reports into their inbox they can share with colleagues. Then start to explore the more specialised tools like account schedules, and then eventually look at external reporting tools. But it's a sliding scale where they're getting increasing detail and value as they go on.
Okay, so we'll cover some of those things today as we go through this podcast. So we talked about the role centre. That's kind of minute you log in, right in front of you, get that key information.
But they don't scroll down. Because you log in, it's in front of you, but actually it's 3 or 4 pages long.
Yeah, and people are so robotic, aren't they? After they do, so you need to make sure it's really pertinent information that they're seeing.
Whichever version you're using, there's some built-in charts there. So whether it's Nav or Business Central, there's always been some built-in charts in the role centre. You just have to scroll down to see them. But a lot of those, although it's not obvious at first, they're using built-in account schedules, and they might appear to not work for the user for a new company straight away, but with a very minor change in the account schedule that feeds its data, it'll start working.
Yeah.
So one data field change, basically.
Yeah.
And then they start getting some KPI value.
Yeah. Well, that's the point of those front screens, isn't it? That kind of KPI. What should I be looking at today? What needs my immediate attention? Okay, so kind of the classic way of getting data out historically with BC has been the old copy and paste, or send to Excel, or whichever version that you're used to. There's more to it than that now, isn't there? There's more that they can do with that.
Much more now. I mean, people are quite comfortable with Excel. They've always been able to export things. There's open in Excel versus edit in Excel for a start. There's a nice add-in in Excel for Business Central. So on the screens that allow it with validation, they can actually modify system data with the appropriate controls and push it back into the system. But the open in Excel, they've taken that further. So there's now Excel reports built in that actually give you the report straight away into Excel that you can manipulate outside the system. Where
so if you're on a pivot table, charts, all that kind of stuff, you can do that in the very familiar environment, and it's just giving you that data.
And they're quite a recent change, so they're definitely worth exploring if they haven't been so far.
Okay. And what about the company hub? Have you seen that?
Yes, that's snuck in recently. It's almost heading towards sort of intercompany reporting, but it doesn't require it to be intercompany setup. It's simply giving you a little portal to view certain key pieces of data across all the companies in your database. And it's things.
So if you're a financial controller and you've got multiple companies in your group, or you're responsible for the finances for multiple companies, you can see some kind of key information all in one place about those companies.
Outstanding debt, outstanding entries, that kind of stuff, cash balances.
Intercompany balances, so you can see where they don't.
But without any real setup, it's just a couple of clicks and it'll start working.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work out of the box because it needs to be told which companies to review as part of the hub.
Okay, so just a bit of setup there, and that's ready to go as well.
Same with a lot of these is a minor investigation will get it working and give them good value.
Okay. I went out to a customer once and showed them how to use Save Views, and they basically told me I'd changed their life.
I get that, yes.
And I think that every single Dynamics user should be using Saved Views. If you're constantly having to go into lists and sort it, filter it, then just set yourself up some Saved Views, and if you learn how to do it and use it.
I now encourage people to go into a flow field, a filtered field like Balance LCY, and just break it, rip it apart, and make it into the filters they actually want for their own reports. And then bookmark it on the front screen, so they've got the customer ledger entries or vendor ledger entries, and they've got a filter there that shows them the overdue payments, the payments due in this week, the unallocated payments, whatever they want straight away, just at one click.
Yeah.
Bypass all the system reports you like, just it's there and it's the data you want.
And again, because when we first set out to do a new implementation, you will show the user this very early on, won't you? It's almost like the first session they do. And when you haven't got your own data to work from when you're doing that, it's difficult to think about the scenarios that you would use it in. So it's something, again, that I would encourage people to get their users to revisit those overview notes and those overview sessions, so that they can really use, and that once they've got their own data, they can really see how that can benefit.
Well, I now build it into VAT return sessions, that kind of stuff, so when they're quite advanced users and moving on much further, actually revisit these basic tools that help make their life much simpler.
Yeah. Do you think many customers use the statistics screens?
No.
No, they don't, do they?
Because it's too far down the page.
Yeah.
They won't see it.
So again, that's there's some really good information in some of those screens, isn't there? Things that people will go away and build really complicated jet reports for. But average days late on your payment terms for your customers and your vendors, so your average payment terms, things that aren't necessarily on the customer card or the vendor card, but are really good pieces of information that actually, if you wanted to go away and write a jet report for that, that's not that easy.
I think Microsoft have been sneaking extras in for quite some time and not really publicising them particularly and shouting about them. But what you can get a standard on a customer card now has dramatically improved.
Yeah, definitely.
With the fact boxes and the statistics tab at the bottom, you have a lot of data at your fingertips straight away.
Okay. So I think most users will be aware of GL registers because they'll have seen them on the menu. I guarantee that most of our customers have never run them. What scenarios would you use those for?
I introduce it as the audit trail.
Yeah.
So you can, an auditor wants to see all the reversals done in a certain period. You've got source codes there for month end when they're trying to work out if there's something that's not quite reconciling in the trial balance.
Yeah, or if someone's done some postings after you closed the period.
Absolutely. So use part of the VAT return process as well when there's a question mark, shall we say.
So it's a really good tool for troubleshooting, isn't it? For trying to reconcile, audit. Or that and that's there either on screen or as a physical printout as well, isn't it?
Yes, because most people end up they can find the transaction they're interested in, and they can either use Navigate or find entries to see the post entries on that transaction. or they can drill in the chart of accounts, but actually you can use that same entry number in the geo registers and they can work from the other direction.
Yeah.
And they find that quite handy.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So in terms of, again, the actual standard reports, the reports that are inbuilt into the system, again, people will sometimes look at them at the very beginning of their implementations, and because they haven't got much data, they don't make a lot of sense. But there's hundreds, isn't there?
Yes. Well, before I even look at those, though, I start on, there's some reporting screens that do the job of a report that are built in the chart of accounts, for example.
Yeah.
So there's payables, receivables.
Yeah, of course.
Really simple cash flow. Just give me a total of my customer or vendor ledger entries week by week or month by month. Now, the customers may not pay to terms, so it may not be completely accurate, but for the amount of work involved, which is pretty much one click, you've got a really quite nice, simple cash flow reporting tool.
And then you've got things like the GL balance by dimension, and the balance to budget type screens. And of course, the great thing about them is where you see an anomaly, you just drill down on them straight away.
Yep.
So, if you've gone and built complex reports in Excel that, you have to refresh them to start with because we're constantly changing. But, it's great to see it on screen so you can drill right down to the raw data, especially if there's anomalies or there's things that you want to investigate further.
Absolutely. I really like getting the value from the built-in tools and using things like the chart of accounts overview.
Yeah.
And the other overview tools where basically you are able to view the chart of accounts information but at different summary levels. So if they've got the right structure in the chart of accounts, because again it comes slightly full circle, if you've got begin and end totals, you can look at the overview and look at different detail levels. If you're using the GL account subcategories, then you can look at that information categorised by account rather than by account number as well. Mm-hmm. So you can get much more information out of it than just filtering the chart of accounts, which in itself works quite well for many people.
Yeah.
There's a lot they can do just off that screen.
Oh yeah, 100%. You're using it all the time, aren't you? And if nothing else, just stick it out to Excel and pivot table it.
It's trying to stop people just working in Excel all the time is the challenge.
Okay. So those are the kind of screens that are available that allow you to interrogate your data. There's hundreds. I mean, we couldn't possibly touch on all the standard reports, but it really is worth going through and trying those reports and seeing what they give you. There's different ways that you can run them now. So they can be put on a schedule. They can be put on a schedule so they're emailed out to people, so they sit in their inbox every morning. A lot of them have some really useful information. Is there anything you'd like that you think you should pull out and say, right, go and have a look at that one? Any new ones, anything? Because they haven't changed hugely, have they?
No, there's the payment practices one snuck in, I think, in January 2018. So it's end of NAV and start of Business Central. That initially might sound like it won't suit a lot of our customers because actually payment practices...
Payment practices sounds a bit corporate and a bit...
It's the rules for compliance
yeah.
on much larger companies than some of our customers will be, in terms of you need 250 employees and a certain size of balance sheet. But more recently they brought out a payment practices code. So because corporate responsibility, ESG, is now got a hot topic, if one of our customers wanted to show that they are being a particularly considerate company,
okay.
and they can sign up for this payment practices code and basically agree to pay all their much smaller suppliers. So any of their suppliers that are less than 30 employees, they agree to pay within the terms are manipulated to be less than 30 days basically.
Okay.
So they're paying promptly and they can
so it calls you a bit of social responsibility here.
Yes, and it's been quite a hot topic recently. So whilst it might not be something they have to do because they don't fall under the requirement of the practices, they can sign up for the code, and it's something that the system has a standard report that will let you use.
I'm going to go run that in our internal system afterwards, just to see.
Because all it requires is you just to mark certain vendors to not be included if they're beyond the size, and then you can see how well you pay according to terms.
Okay, interesting. Right, okay, so here's my real bugbear, is that customers don't use account schedules. there is not a single one of our customers that does not need to produce a profit and loss, a balance sheet, a trial balance, cash flow report, all these different kinds of reports. That everybody needs them. But the account schedules are so underutilised. And whilst they have got some really nice new features in recent years, they're not massively different. So this is applicable across customers, whatever versions they're on. They are a really, really good tool. They allow you to structure your P&L and balance sheet. No matter what your chart of accounts is, you can structure it differently on your account schedule, so you can group things together. Do it smartly, so that when you add a new GL code, and if you've got a whole host of Excel reports that you use, you've then got to go and insert that GL code into every single one of those reports, or forget to do that and find that nothing balances at the end of the month. Whereas if you do it smartly in account schedules, it'll automatically be inserted into the right bucket on your account schedule report. You can do your comparisons with your budgets. You can break it down by dimension, so whether that's department or cost centre or however you want to do it. Again, it's all available on screen, so you can drill down to where there's an anomaly. You've got a big jump in a overhead code in a particular month. You can drill down and have a look at the raw data really easily. You can export them to Excel if you must have them in Excel. But they really people don't use them as much as they should. Why do you think that is, George?
I think they're a bit hidden in the background.
Yeah.
And they are their bespoke reporting tool. They can create whatever they like. I think you just need a little bit of a steer in terms of, take the column layouts. The fact that you can present your data for this month compared to this period last year. The fact you can look at a quarter and look at a variance to previous years. But unless you're shown it, it's very much one of these sort of hidden gems that you need to just have a couple of examples to work from, and then they click and straight away they're creating things.
Yeah, because it used to be when you installed Nav or even BC, there was nothing there. You had to build it all from scratch, didn't you? Whereas at least now, when you install it, you do get a few sample reports, don't you?
Because of those free charts on the Role Centre that require some of the built-in account schedules, there are at least a couple in there to start you off, and I think 3 or 4 of the column layouts. So yeah, you've got a few pointers which you can take a look at and steal ideas from
exactly.
to build your own.
You can usually work it out, can't you? And there's loads of information out there about account schedules. We run training on them. But, actually, they're not that difficult to do for anybody that's got that kind of... If you can go and build a P&L and a balance sheet on Excel, then you can go in and do it in an account schedule.
It generally takes me an hour to go through with a customer, and then they're away.
Yeah, which is again, but get your budgets into BC as well, because a lot of people are still maintaining budgets on spreadsheets. You can put those in, because you can have multiple budgets as well, can't you, for a period. So if you reforecast, you can have a reforecast budget as well, and then in your account schedules, you can choose which of those budgets you want to pick up for your comparison purposes, or your comparison might be this period last year or this period 2 years ago. So it's there's so much that it can do. And, it's completely user definable as well, isn't it? So, you can make your P&L and balance sheet look, the rows and the columns, pretty much whatever you need. It
might be because you've got the analysis view separated out. Because the account schedule by itself can use 2 dimensions. Some people are slightly wary of dimensions at first for their reporting. And then if you use the analysis views, you can open up 4 dimensions, potentially with a 5th one in the background snuck in as a filter. I think that might not have helped to be clear as to what exactly it can do. Okay. But there's huge potential there.
Yeah, 100%. It can be a massive time saver.
But having you mentioned just there the budgets, the more that's in the system, the more they can report against. There's the cash flow forecast. So they can have multiple cash flow forecasts.
Yeah, of course. Again, cash flow, every single business I think that I'm aware of needs a cash flow report, and again that area of Business Central isn't used that much to be able to do that. And I think traditionally it's been the kind of Excel based accountants report, so they do their magic, but actually there's some really valuable information there, isn't there? And I foresee that will only get better and better, as they start to increase the number of artificial intelligence type queries that you can use to kind of predict cash flow. So you can always predict when somebody might pay based on their history and that kind of thing. I can only see that will get better and better and more accurate.
Yeah, because it's been creeping in by the back door for a while that now if you start a sales order for a customer who's got a bad payment history, there's a notification that pops up and tells you. The AI in the background has been gaining pace quite a lot.
Yeah.
There's actually an Azure experiment to try and look at your customer's payment history and work out a modifier to their payment terms so that when they will actually pay you based on their proven track record, should we call it. So there's some really good stuff in the cash flow forecast that I'm kind of having to wean people off a spreadsheet, and they can consider which elements they use. So it's quite a big jump from going from that payables, receivables, filterable screen to the full module. But again, it's an hour of looking at stuff and working out what will work for you. But just like the GL budget, you can have multiple forecasts and try out different parameters.
Yeah, so you do some kind of what if type scenarios.
It's really flexible.
Yeah, okay.
And then report against it. It all comes back to the more that's in the system, the more of this they can use for the reporting.
And that's all done via an account. It can all be done via account scheduler as well, so you can kind of have your bespoke columns and rows and the information that you need. So that's all. And that you don't need a developer for anything that me and George have talked about today. You don't need developers for. It's there already. It's configuration, not development. So you could go away and have a go at it tomorrow.
Yeah, well, value out of the standard system.
Okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on was sales analysis views. Probably one of the things that I talk to customers a lot, and they'll just say, I just wanted to get margin. I just want to see the margin on a product. You can get in very in-depth conversations around costing methods and how value entries work and how adjust cost item entries work and all those different things. But actually, the sales analysis views are a really powerful tool when it comes to analysing sales costs and inventory type transactions, isn't it? It's really loads of powerful information.
Really powerful, a complete flip from the account schedules that look at the GL entries. Here we're looking at the item entries and the detail you can get out. This is probably the more challenging end of understanding the setup in terms of creating these. But once customers start digging in, they can get the detail out of the system without using an external reporting tool, without going to Jet Report straight away and having to drag this data out. Yeah. It's all there and it's all filterable and reportable for them.
Yeah. And there's lots of benefits, isn't there, to having it in system rather than out of system. So, if it's in system, for a start, everybody's looking at the same version of the truth. Everybody, you're not going to have people taking spreadsheets away, monitoring, amending certain fields, and having like slightly different versions of the same report. If it's in system, everyone's looking at the same thing. Again, you can drill down into the detail behind it really easily. If you make an adjustment, then it's reflected straight away, rather than having to go and update, whether it depends on what type of reporting you use, and having to update your data warehouse or whatever it is that you've got. So actually, there's a lot of benefit to having it there, but also you could potentially use it on your queues, on your role centres for generating other things in the system as well. So that's really worth looking at, isn't it? So if you think about sales analysis views, then you can, again, it's got a rows and columns type format, hasn't it? But you could go down to very detailed, can't you? Rows could almost be individual products, and then you can look at sales, costs, stock against the individual products. It might be product groups, it might be dimensions, there's lots of kind of different...
It gives you every possible permutation and goes way beyond the standard report straight away. It just gives you a sort of profit percentage for a particular item that you're selling to really let you tease out that
because on all of these, on the analysis views, on the account schedules and on the sales analysis views, you can have calculated columns as well, can't you?
Yes.
So you can kind of calculate a margin, you can calculate percentages, that kind of thing. You can calculate variances. Again, you can send these out to Excel as well if you need to, and you want to be able to do some nice fancy pie charts or bar charts.
I think they're the most underused element of the things we're discussing, because there's probably only one customer I've spoken to that's using them in the system in my time here. So definitely one worth exploring further.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got some training courses that we can run around a lot of these different types of So there's several things we've touched on. There's kind of the basic, the roles, the cues, the filters, the views. That's kind of covered by our general overview training, because they're principles that you can use across system, really, and across function. So the same training course will be applicable to someone in sales, or if they're in purchase, if they're in accounts. Then you've got the much more specific training that sits around account schedules, which is very kind of finance led, and then analysis views, which is very much kind of margin and reporting led. So we can do training in all of those different areas, and actually they're relatively short training courses and should give payback relatively quickly, because everything's there and you can start using them.
Yes, they're all
straight away.
1 hour to 2 hours max focused short courses.
Okay, so we can run those remotely as well. So a couple of hours, run remotely, get you started, off you go, and start using that information as soon as you can.
I have the video and the booklets, so they can pick it up straight away afterwards.
Yeah, so we'd recommend them, wouldn't we? Investigating all these things that we've talked about today before going out invest. And there is, there's huge benefit of going out investing in things like Power BI and Jet reports, because they have enormous capabilities. But some types of reporting, and some types it's there, and you don't need to invest in third-party products. So depending on the volume of your data, depending on how you want the reports to look visually, there's actually a lot you can get out of the standard system.
Yeah, they jump too soon, I think, to external reporting and overlook just the built-in benefits.
Yeah, and that's getting better all the time as well.
Yes, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, exactly. So with every release, there's more and more in the standard product, in the core of the product, that can be used, as I say, straight away. No development, just config only.
Because sometimes it's either they're existing users that have come from an older version that then need to catch up on the new features and new reporting tools, or sometimes it's because of the pressure of a project, which is a pressurised time for them. They've not had time to become fully aware of all the other things they can use. They then start doing something off system, and because it's off system, they maintain it off system. So I'm there trying to wean people off their spreadsheets for things like their deferred expenses, so the prepaid invoices, for example, and they're maintaining those outside the system and doing a monthly journal. But there's a report that'll let them deal with this and review it as they go forward, and there's the deferment schedule and deferment templates to help them do that. So the more they start looking, they find advantages in terms of their own time savings each month, I find.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks, George. Thank you for listening today. See you on the next episode.